Hey, good morning. This video is going to be different from the ones that I've done in the past. I just wanted to kind of try to make a video where I can answer as authentically as possible. And I've also been in a lot of pain. I don't know if you guys heard the recent news about my arm. Sometimes life feels like I'm making one step forward and two steps back, and that would be how I kind of feel in this moment right now. And it's just like, hey, I'm just going to try and do a video like this. I've been receiving a lot of questions from individuals, and I figured, what if I just do like a Q&A video and then share it to YouTube? Maybe I'll try and put them in the timeline. If there's one specific question you want an answer to, I guess I'll just go into question number one. Cloudwalker33 asks, what exactly is the brace on your arm and how long do you have to wear it and how close to 100% do you think you'll get? What the brace does is it basically keeps my arm in line when it's moving. And I'm supposed to wear it 100% of the time because right now I'm missing so much bone from my elbow. Basically, when I had crashed the paraglider or the paramotor, I was coming down like on my back, falling out of the sky, looking back up at the sky. And when I hit, it looks like my elbow was the first body part that had made contact with the ground. And at the rate of speed that I was going, it basically pulverized the bone. For whatever reason, I've wanted to share with all of you the actual footage from the surgeon that shows the operation. It's extremely graphic, and so therefore the reason I haven't shared it is because I assume that it would just be taken down off of YouTube. I've thought about maybe putting it on Twitter or just sharing it on my Patreon. The elbow joint has so much missing bone that the hinge device basically keeps it in place. I'm supposed to wear it 100% of the time except for when I'm in bed, according to the doctor. The problem is like if my arm starts to hurt, then I'll put the brace on and the pain will go down. But if I have been wearing that brace for too long, it will actually start to cause pain, and then when I take it off, I find relief in keeping it off. So basically throughout the day, I'm keeping the brace on and taking it off and putting it on and taking it off. How long will you have to wear it? The doctor told me that I would have to wear it for about 1 to 1.5 years from now, unless there were any further setbacks. So I'll get to that. How close do I think I'll be able to get to 100%? In my mind, I want to get back to 100%. And the stupid thing about YouTube is that some of the individuals in the comments will be like, oh, you'll never get back to where you were, you deserve this. I mean, there are some really freaking nasty people, which is also another one of the questions in this Q&A. So I don't want to jump the gun. But in my mind, how close do I think I'll be able to get to 100%? My hope is that I'll get to 110%, or I mean, I'd be super happy with 101% of what I was at before. Yes, of course, I would be happy at 100% of where I was, but there's obviously a possibility that I'll be at 80% or freaking 60% of where my arm was before. That to me is like the most mentally exhausting component of this entire thing. I don't know. Most of the time, I just assume that to be the prognosis, is that I'm going to get back. If you were to ask my doctors, they generally take a more pessimistic stance. I do, with good reason, believe that my arm will get to a point where I'll be able to do average person types of things. I joined the military. I want to push as hard as I can. I don't just want to join the army. I want to go to the Rangers and the Special Forces and things like that. That's my mindset, is I just want to push as hard as I can. I want it to be difficult and I want to get there. And now in the past, there were no excuses for why I wouldn't be able to get there. And now I'm starting to wonder, is there legitimately a thing where I'm just being too damn stubborn that I'm not accepting that, hey, your strongest days are behind you? Kale Holder asked me on Facebook, he said, how's the arm healing and when do you plan on flying? I think about 2 months ago, I was complaining to my physical therapist and occupational therapist. I'd been complaining to the surgeon saying, there's something that just feels off with my arm. I broke my neck. And then on my back, pretty big section of a thoracic spinal fusion. And then my pelvis fractured in 3 places. The point is, I'm like super happy with the progress that those areas have made. The difference between my arm and the other body parts is that my arm feels like there's something structural that is totally not jiving. When there's something wrong with the structure, then it's like, how do we overcome this? When do you plan on flying? I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel nervous to answer the question because of how many people have told me I'm stupid if I was to fly a paramotor again. And inconsiderate because I'm a father and I have my wife to think of. If I do fly again, I'm going to take it easy, and that's exactly how I feel. I don't think that I'm physically capable of flying safely right now. God, I sound like an idiot. I'm not physically capable of flying a paramotor right now because my arm is screwed. I plan to fly again when, truthfully, I know that I can lift that paramotor up onto my back and then pull start it. There are a lot of times that you're using your arms, and I also have to be considerate of my pelvis. I have been doing squats. I've been doing a good amount of weight, like 100 plus pounds of squatting, which I know isn't very impressive, but considering the injuries that I've gone through, I think it is like, I'm happy with that. That's the other thing, is a lot of people are quick to assume that my family is so against it, which actually they're not. I do plan on doing a podcast with my wife because I want to just have a conversation like this with her where she can kind of share everything that she had gone through on the day where I had crashed. Because as you can imagine, for those of you out there who are married, if your wife gets a phone call and it's like, oh my God, you've just plowed yourself into the desert. Like, it's equally as traumatic for her as it was, for me. Aerobatic 500 asked, wondering how long it will take for a full recovery of your arm. Very similar question, but I will add this. This thing on my arm is because I ended up having surgery 2 days ago. The week before the surgery, I was calling the surgeon's office saying, hey, there's something sticking out of my arm, like underneath the skin, kind of as though you had erected a tent pole and there was something pushing out against the skin. And obviously in my mind, I suspected that one of the screws had come loose, which is exactly what it turned out to be. So I went to the surgeon's office. I have these images. There's the first x-ray after the accident. And then this is the one that is the most recent one. You can see that the head of the screw is totally backed out. Here's like the surgical notes. X-rays demonstrate the male component of the tibia, being backed out, indicating significant bone loss from the initial injury. It's like, damn it. The screw must be removed to prevent complications. Then they tell me that, oh, we're gonna have to remove that screw. They've like sliced off. I don't know. Like when I moved my arm, it's like it just popped into place. But it's not only on that side. They sliced my arm on the other side because that rod runs all the way through my arm, and they had to grab both sides to screw it back down. Chamalis3 asked, did you ever consider legal action after the ambulance mishandled the transport? The paramedics had done their head-to-toe assessment. They asked me, hey, what's up? What happened? I told the paramedic, I said, like, I crashed my flying machine. I was like flying along and the glider just collapsed. I was at about like, I think I maybe said like 80, 100 feet, somewhere in that ballpark range. They did their head to toe assessment. They cut off my clothes. They found my right arm with all of the bones sticking out of it. But here's the part that pisses me off. By the time that I was finally loaded into the ambulance, they made their way out of the desert on this bumpy road, and it hurt like a... Finally, it smoothed out and I could feel that we were driving down the road. But in my mind, I'm thinking, holy shit, are we actually going this slow right now? I leaned over to the paramedic beside me and I'm kind of embarrassed admitting this, but I looked at him and I said, do you think I'm going to make it? Because in my mind, I had thought because of the impact on the ground, that sudden stop, that I may be slowly bleeding out internally. Eventually, I feel the ambulance roll to a stop. I asked the paramedic, I'm like, are we at the hospital? And he said, no, we're just stuck at a red light, and but we still got a ways to go. And I was like, are you kidding me? You act like people are falling out of the sky every day, and we're in a freaking quiet part of town. Why are you stopping at a red light when I'm telling you, like, I'm feeling super confused? I'm telling him it's hard to breathe. It gets worse. So I don't know, like throughout the drive, I kept telling them that I'm worried, and I'm like, thinking like, oh my God, I just wish I could tell my wife one more time that I love her. Part of me like really suspects that there's some sort of internal bleeding happening. And then all of a sudden you're just gone. Eventually we do arrive at the hospital, but it wasn't the level 1 trauma center that I should have been at. Instead, it was not even a level 2, it was a level 3 trauma center. By this point, my shock, the actual physiological shock reaction is starting to wear off and the pain is setting in and it's extreme. My wife tells me that we were there for about 3 hours. In those 3 hours, somewhere towards the end, they get me into an MRI machine and that's when the doctor comes out and he's like, oh, why are you here? Okay, let me rewind just a little bit. An individual who has a fall from 2 to 3 times their own height requires a rapid evacuation to like a level 1 trauma center. I had fallen from a height 16 times my own. 16 times. Somebody falls off of a ladder, you go to a level 1 trauma center because of the potential for them to have like internal bleeding or a fracture or potential damage to their spinal cord. I have significantly reduced sensation in my fingers. I know from my past injury in Afghanistan, nerves that are occluded or pressed down upon need to be relieved as quickly as possible to prevent permanent damage. Serious damage can occur within 30 minutes of the nerve being occluded, and it will get progressively worse and worse and worse up until about the 6-hour point where it will become irreversible damage. So all that time dicking around in the ambulance, going slow, my wife even beat the ambulance to the hospital and she changed out the cars. The ambulance departs, she leaves out of the desert, goes back to the house, grabs her things knowing she's going to be at the hospital for a while, makes her way over to the hospital, and she goes inside and she goes, I'm here for Anthony Vella. And they're like, oh, they're not here yet. They're still on their way. But the point is after they took me out of the MRI machine, the doctor came out and the very first thing he said was, I'm not sure if we'll be able to save his arm, because of how fragmented the whole entire thing was. And then he said, there's a lot more. His neck is broken, his back is broken, his lungs are bruised, his heart is bruised, he's concussed, his pelvis is broken in 3 places, his ribs are cracked. Leandra started like crying. And I remember just looking over towards Leandra and telling her, like, it's okay, baby. Like, they've got some pretty cool robot arms now. As the doctor was saying that, at the same time, they're rapidly preparing another ambulance. And then I go to the level 1 trauma center that I should have gone to begin with. Yeah, I do think that they mishandled the transport. At Numbfoot asks, how hard has this been on you and your family? Holy smokes, man. I really don't believe that most people have been blessed to have such an incredible person. Leandra and I both have like Apple Watches, and as many of you may know, they have like heart rate monitors built into them. She looked at her heart rate monitor the day that I crashed, and I think her resting heart rate was like 170 beats per minute for like 3 or 4 hours from the time that I crashed until the time that her heart rate finally started to settle down. I think that in a way that Leandra has owned this. She's kind of like the captain now. I think that the 2 youngest ones, the baby and the toddler, they seem to be super chipper and kind of like unaware of everything going on. The next older ones, our 9-year-old daughter and 12-year-old son, like they're obviously much more aware of what's going on. And at the time of my crash, they were in school. It was on the news, and so a lot of people knew. They weren't actually able to see me for like 2 weeks after my crash. My mom and dad flew into town, so the kids were like really excited to have their goodie and Nanu at the house, and it afforded Leandra the opportunity to literally be by my side the entire time. William Liddy, this question hits hard. He basically was asking if the negative feedback that I had been receiving, in particular the initial crash video, there were some really horrible comments. There were a lot of comments on my screaming, if you will. Like, imagine you're walking down the road and then boom, like right in front of you, somebody just bam hits the sidewalk in front of you. In what world would anybody like see that and see the person screaming in pain or yelling in pain and say, your screams bring me so much joy? It's like, what the? On one end, I do think that there are people who find pleasure in the discomfort and misery of others. Like they just feast on that. On the other hand, I think that people have this tendency to think something is funny that they wouldn't typically, or when they're in their right mind, wouldn't think is necessarily funny. Because it was brought to them on the internet, which is a cesspool of crazy stuff. I do think that there are atrocious people, and then I think that there's people who probably, if I had fallen right in front of them, they would have panicked and wanted to help me, but when they see it on the internet, their reaction is different because they feel so disassociated from the actual event because they're seeing it from their computer screen. I don't want to make it seem as though there wasn't an overwhelming majority of positive feedback, just people, wondering how I'm doing compared to those. It's just that the dark ones really stand out. Just go over to the comment section and you'll see some crazy. I don't know how to say this. If you'd been flying higher and landed safely, would you consider slowing down or even quitting? Damn, that's a really good question, because I had never considered, what if at the very last moment of this death dive, if I had somehow swooped out of the dive, I know for certain that I would have gone and landed. So if I had managed to pull out of that initial crash, I think that for certain I would have been like, whew, oh my God, would you consider slowing down? Totally. If I had pulled out, I would have assumed that had I hit, I would have died because of the rate of speed that I was going down. To this day, it's still kind of crazy that I didn't die. I do not believe that I would have stopped flying because I did hit the ground, and I would like to fly again, and I plan to fly again. Although I want to do it in a really safe setting. I would definitely change the way I fly before the crash. I didn't really understand the extent of the pain that can exist. As I do know now, the consequences of something going that wrong. And I think it's that awareness of what it's like to feel so crippled. If I pulled out of that and I'm like, whoa, if I could have seen a glimpse of what my future looked like having hit the ground and I landed and processed that, I'd be like, pull the reins and really slow it down. Steve Tarbett on Facebook said, I'd love to see you do one last flight. It'd be a positive end on your terms. When I'm physically capable of doing it, I do plan to fly again, and maybe I'll do a video sharing it with all of you. Adam Newbloom asked if I'll fly PPGs again, and outside of the crash, is there anything else that could stop you? I don't think that there's anything that would stop me aside from my actual physical limitations. At rec_adventures asked, do you have any interest in flying FPV planes in the future? Right now, I'm really excited with the FPV drone side of things because I get the visual sensation of flying. In a lot of ways, it's better because I still want to fly paragliders in a way that I know that if I get back into it, I'm not going to. But with FPV, you can push so long as your wallet can support that kind of crap. To answer his question about FPV planes, there is certainly an appeal to it because my first passion in aviation is fixed wing. And even to this day, it's my number one passion is the idea of soaring on wings. So to answer your question, yeah, I'd totally love to try an FPV plane in the future. At Brandon Anoya 3680 asked if the DJI Avata, should he get a refurbished DJI Avata 2? I think that the DJI Avata 2 is super, super cool. You just basically take out of the box, you plug it in, and boom, you're ready to go fly that thing around. My friend Brett, he was the only person to survive in the vehicle when that vehicle hit a roadside bomb. He was in a coma for a long time, had 30 operations by the time that he had woken up in the hospital. He was paralyzed from the waist down. Over time, one of his arms regained function. Well, the other one hasn't, because he commented on the FPV stuff. And he's like, oh man, that's really cool, but I can't because I don't have both hands. I would freaking love it if DJI sent him out one and they're just like, hey man, I heard that you really love our stuff, and here's an FPV drone that you can fly. My friend Brett makes me think of kind of like Game of Thrones, the character Brandon Stark, who is pushed from the window and then paralyzed. He has this dream in the book where he's like really worried that he'll never be able to walk again. And so then the three-eyed raven tells him, he says, you will never walk again, but you will fly. And to me, I'm thinking, dude, that could be my friend Brett. He wouldn't be able to fly a traditional FPV with the radio with two sticks. But because of the Avata 2 and the ingenuity behind that motion controller, he could totally do that. And then I think we should try and get Brett a DJI Avata 2. Just wanted to answer your questions and maybe take it easy on the edit for once. See ya.